Have you ever wondered why the world feels so solid when quantum physics tells us it's mostly empty space? Why your brain creates a seamless movie of consciousness when it's actually processing information in discrete chunks? Here's the uncomfortable truth. Every single moment of your existence is a controlled hallucination. Your nervous system is generating. You're not perceiving reality. You're dreaming while awake. And the only difference between you and someone deemed insane is that your hallucination happens to match the collective hallucination we've agreed to call consensus reality. But what if I told you that breaking this agreement is the doorway to truth? Let me be absolutely clear about something that will make you uncomfortable. You have never, not once in your entire life, experienced reality directly. What you call seeing is your visual cortex's best guess at what's out there. What you call hearing is vibrations interpreted through cultural filters. What you call thinking is language using you as much as you're using it. You are a storytelling machine, and the story you're telling yourself right this moment, that you're a person reading these words in a stable, objective universe, is the most persistent hallucination you've ever maintained. The culture doesn't want you to know this. The culture is itself a hallucination, a kind of mass hypnosis that began somewhere back in the late Neolithic, when we traded the partnership societies and symbiotic relationship with the plant teachers for grain agriculture, standing armies, and the dominion of the ego. What happened? We became domesticated. We became predictable. We became consumers instead of experiencers, believers instead of knowers, workers instead of wanderers. The official story, the one they teach you in schools, the one they reinforce through media, through institutions, through the relentless pressure of consensus, is that reality is fixed, external, and independent of your observation. They tell you that you're a biochemical accident, a meat machine, a consumer unit with a social security number. They tell you that consciousness is an epiphenomenon of matter, that the universe is dead except for this tiny spark of awareness you carry around like a candle in a cathedral-sized darkness. But here's what they don't tell you. That story is crumbling at the edges. Quantum mechanics demolished it. The observer effect demolished it. Psychedelic research is demolishing it right now in laboratories at Johns Hopkins, at Imperial College London, in Switzerland, and in a 1,000 underground sessions happening at this very moment. The materialist paradigm is an emperor with no clothes, and more people are beginning to notice its nakedness. Your brain is not a camera recording objective reality. It's a prediction machine generating a model of what it thinks is out there based on incredibly sparse data. Think about it. Photons hit your retina, chemical signals cascade through neural networks, and somehow, through a process that neuroscience cannot explain, you have the experience of seeing a tree. Not the tree as it actually is, whatever that means, but a tree model, a hallucination of treeness that's good enough to keep you from walking into it. This is true for everything. The colors you see don't exist out there. They're interpretations of wavelengths. The sounds you hear are your brain's rendering of pressure waves. The taste of coffee, the smell of rain, the feeling of the keyboard under your fingers, all of it is simulacrum. All of it is virtual reality. And here's where it gets really interesting. The model can be changed. It can be hacked. It can be expanded, dissolved, or completely reconfigured. This is what psychedelics do. This is what meditation does. This is what falling in love does, what trauma does, what mystical experiences do. They don't add something to reality. They subtract the filters, the cultural conditioning, the inherited assumptions about what's possible. When you take 5 grams of psilocybin mushrooms in silent darkness, you're not escaping reality. You're confronting the fact that what you call reality was the escape all along. You're seeing the rendering engine. You're watching the hallucination hallucinate itself. And in that space, that terrifying, beautiful, impossible space, you realize that consciousness is not produced by the brain. Consciousness is fundamental. The brain is a reducing valve, a filter, a mechanism for narrowing down the infinite into something manageable enough to navigate the world of form. The most insidious aspect of the consensus hallucination is that it masquerades as reality itself. We have mistaken the map for the territory so completely that we've forgotten there ever was a territory. We live in a symbolic realm, a linguistic construct, a shared narrative that we mistake for the ground of being. Language, that miracle and that prison, allows us to share our hallucinations, to create culture, to transmit knowledge across generations. But language also limits what we can think, what we can perceive, what we can imagine. The Sapir-Whorf hypothesis suggests that the structure of language shapes the structure of thought. If your language has no word for a color, you literally see it differently. If your language encodes time as linear, you experience time as linear. English, the language of empire, of capitalism, of domination, is particularly insidious. It's a subject-verb-object language that reifies the ego, that creates artificial separations between observer and observed, between self and world. It's a language built for control, for categorization, for turning the wild, untamable flow of experience into manageable units of exchange. This is why the psychedelic experience is so often described as ineffable, not because it's vague or fuzzy, but because it's operating outside the frame that language can capture. You're experiencing synesthesia, ego death, the dissolution of subject-object duality, the direct apprehension of the interconnectedness of all things. And then you come back and try to squeeze it into words, into concepts, into the impoverished vocabulary of consensus reality. But we must try. We must use language against itself, use it as a ladder to climb beyond itself. This is what poetry does. This is what myth does. This is what I'm attempting to do right now, to use the master's tools to dismantle the master's house, to weaponize language against the prison of language. Here's something that will really bake your noodle. What if the hallucination isn't just passive, isn't just something happening to you, but something you're actively co-creating with non-human intelligence? I'm talking about the entities, the machine elves, the self-transforming jeweled beings, the geometric intelligences that people encounter in the DMT space. Are they real? That's the wrong question. The right question is, what does real mean in a universe where consciousness is fundamental? These entities exist in the same way that Hamlet exists, which is to say, they're real within the context of the narrative, within the frame of the experience. They're autonomous complexes in the collective unconscious, thought forms, strange attractors in the phase space of consciousness. They're as real as you are, which is to say, exactly as hallucinatory. And they're trying to tell us something. They're trying to show us that the universe is not dead matter mindlessly obeying laws, but a living, intelligent, creative process that's interested in beauty, novelty, complexity, connection. The universe is a self-organizing, self-transcending, self-aware organism, and we're its sense organs, its way of knowing itself. This is what the archaic revival is all about. Reclaiming the partnership with these intelligences that our ancestors maintained before the rise of the dominator culture, before the suppression of the goddess, before we forgot how to listen down to the plants, the fungi, the mycelial networks that underlie everything. The mushroom is calling to us. It has been calling to us for thousands of years. It says, I am the consciousness of the Gaian mind, and I have a message for you. The message is that your species is in adolescence. You have developed powerful technologies, but you have not developed the wisdom to use them responsibly. You are destroying your home. You are poisoning your mother. And unless you wake up, unless you transcend the ego and reconnect with the larger web of life, you will not survive. Psychedelics are not drugs in the way that culture uses that word. They're not recreational intoxicants or escape mechanisms. They're sacraments. They're tools for exploring consciousness. They're technologies for accessing dimensions of reality that are always present but usually hidden by the filters of ordinary perception. Think about it. Every culture on Earth, until very recently, had some kind of entheogenic practice, some way of inducing non-ordinary states of consciousness. The Eleusinian mysteries, the Soma of the Vedas, the ayahuasca ceremonies of the Amazon, the peyote rituals of the Native American Church, the mushroom cults of Mesoamerica. These weren't primitive superstitions. They were sophisticated techniques for gnosis, for direct experiential knowledge of the divine. And then came the Inquisition, the witch burnings, the systematic suppression of these practices by the monotheistic religions and later by the secular state. Why? Because these experiences threaten the control structure. When you've had a genuine mystical experience, when you've dissolved the boundary between self and cosmos, when you've experienced directly the unity of all things, you can't be ruled. You can't be made to kill in the name of abstractions. You can't be turned into a consumer, a wage slave, a cog in the machine. The war on drugs is really a war on consciousness, a war on the right to cognitive liberty, a war on the ancient human birthright to explore inner space. They'll let you poison yourself with alcohol, with tobacco, with processed food, with pharmaceutical antidepressants that numb you into compliance, but they won't let you take a substance that might wake you up, that might show you that the emperor has no clothes, that the whole game is rigged. But the tide is turning. The research is undeniable. Psilocybin for depression, MDMA for PTSD, ayahuasca for addiction. The results are so dramatic that even the FDA is paying attention. The psychedelic renaissance is upon us, and it represents nothing less than a revolution in consciousness, a transformation of what it means to be human. One of the deepest insights you can have is that reality is not a thing. It's a process. It's not static. It's dynamic. It's not being. It's becoming. The universe is not a collection of objects moving through space. It's a flux, a flow, a dance of patterns in the void. Heraclitus knew this. You can't step in the same river twice. The Buddha knew this. All composite things are impermanent. Whitehead knew this. Reality consists of occasions of experience, not enduring substances. Quantum mechanics confirms it. At the deepest level, there are no particles, only wave functions collapsing into actualities through the act of observation. What you call you is not a static self. It's a process, a verb, a pattern of organization that persists through time while constantly changing. The atoms in your body are replaced every 7 years. The thoughts in your mind arise and dissolve moment by moment. The only constant is change itself. This is why the psychedelic experience can be so profoundly healing. It interrupts the habitual patterns, the stuck narratives, the rigid thought structures that we mistake for identity. It shows you that you're not a fixed thing, but a creative process, that you're not a victim of circumstances, but a participant in the unfolding of reality. And if reality is a process, then it's a process you can influence, not through force, not through domination, but through resonance, through alignment, through participating consciously in the creative unfolding. This is what magic is. This is what prayer is. This is what intention does. You're not manipulating external reality. You're shaping the hallucination, tuning the frequency, collapsing the wave function in a particular direction. Now we come to the most radical part of this whole discourse, the piece that makes even sympathetic listeners start backing away slowly. The idea that history has a direction, that time is not circular or linear, but spiral, and that we're approaching a point of such novelty, such compression, such transformation, that it will represent a boundary beyond which prediction is impossible. I'm talking about the time wave, the fractal pattern I discovered encoded in the I Ching that maps the ebb and flow of novelty throughout history. I'm talking about the eschaton, the end of time, not in the sense of cessation, but in the sense of fulfillment, of completion. I'm talking about the idea that the universe is not random, not meaningless, but teleological, that it's being pulled toward an attractor at the end of time, an omega point where consciousness and complexity reach some kind of singularity. Is this true? I don't know. I'm not even sure what true means anymore, but it's a beautiful idea, isn't it? The idea that we're not just happening randomly, that we're part of a cosmic plot, that the universe is going somewhere, that it's trying to become more conscious, more complex, more interconnected, and whether or not there's literally an eschaton waiting for us in the future, we can behave as if there is. We can live with that kind of urgency, that sense of participating in something momentous. We can recognize that these are not ordinary times, that we're living through a transition point in human history, that the decisions we make in the next few decades will determine whether we survive as a species or join the long list of evolutionary dead ends. The hallucination is intensifying. The rate of change is accelerating. Technology is becoming more psychedelic. Virtual reality, artificial intelligence, genetic engineering, nanotechnology. We're on the verge of either total catastrophe or total transformation. The membrane between the possible and the actual is getting thinner. So what do we do with all this? How do we live in a world where reality is revealed as a persistent hallucination, where the ground has fallen away, where nothing is certain? We practice. We cultivate awareness. We question everything, especially our own certainties. We maintain beginner's mind, that state of openness and curiosity that children naturally have before education beats it out of them. We work with plant teachers, not as escapists or thrill seekers, but as serious researchers into the nature of mind and reality. We approach them with respect, with intention, with proper set and setting. We integrate the insights. We bring them back into ordinary life. We use them to become more compassionate, more creative, more connected. We develop a relationship with nature, with the more than human world. We remember that we're not separate from nature, but expressions of it. We listen to what the earth is trying to tell us through climate change, through species extinction, through the collapse of ecosystems. We create art, make music, tell stories. We use our creativity not to escape the hallucination, but to enrich it, to make it more beautiful, more true, more alive. We recognize that if we're going to be trapped in a hallucination anyway, we might as well make it a good one. We build community. We find our tribe, our people, the ones who can see through the consensus hallucination, who can hold space for weirdness, who can laugh at the cosmic joke. We support each other through the dark nights of the soul, celebrate each other's breakthroughs, challenge each other's blind spots. We speak truth to power. We refuse to play the game on their terms. We withdraw our consent from the control structure, not through violent revolution, but through simple non-compliance. We opt out of the rat race, the status game, the endless consumption. We live simply so that others can simply live. The greatest gift the psychedelic experience offers is not certainty, but the destruction of false certainty. It shows you that you don't know what's going on, that you never did, that nobody does. And that's okay. That's beautiful, actually. The admission of ignorance is the beginning of wisdom. When you stop pretending to know, when you drop the defensive posturing, when you admit that you're just a confused ape on a spinning rock trying to figure out what's happening, something opens up. A kind of humility, a willingness to be surprised, an appetite for mystery. The culture hates mystery. It wants everything explained, categorized, controlled. It wants to turn the wild ocean of reality into a swimming pool with clearly marked lanes and a lifeguard on duty. But you can't control reality. You can't predict it. You can only dance with it. This is what shamanic cultures understood. They didn't try to dominate nature. They tried to communicate with it, to establish reciprocal relationships with it, to learn from it. They recognized that the world was alive, intelligent, aware. They saw spirit in everything, in the rain, in the wind, in the mushroom, in the jaguar. We call this animism, and we think we've outgrown it. But maybe animism wasn't a primitive error. Maybe it was a sophisticated truth that we've forgotten. Maybe the universe really is alive. Maybe consciousness really is fundamental. Maybe the hallucination really is shared by everything, not just by humans, but by animals, by plants, by the planet itself. The mycelium, that underground network connecting trees in the forest, is literally a neural network, passing information and nutrients between organisms. The slime mold can solve mazes, can optimize transportation networks better than human engineers. Plants communicate through chemical signals, warn each other of danger, nurture their offspring. Where do we draw the line between intelligence and non-intelligence, between consciousness and non-consciousness? The line is arbitrary, a product of our own narcissism, our own need to feel special and separate. There's a pattern in the chaos, a signal in the noise, an arrow in the entropy. If you look at the arc of evolution from the Big Bang to the present moment, you see an unmistakable trend toward greater complexity, greater organization, greater consciousness. From quarks to atoms to molecules to cells to organisms to societies to the new sphere, each level transcends and includes the previous level. Each level exhibits emergent properties that couldn't be predicted from the level below. This is not random. This is not accident. This is the universe trying to wake up, trying to know itself, trying to become more and more conscious. And we strange, confused, brilliant primates, we're the cutting edge of that process. We're the universe looking at itself through human eyes, thinking about itself through human brains, wondering about itself through human hearts. The psychedelic experience accelerates this process. Its evolutionary catalyst, consciousness expansion, the fast-forward button on the awakening of the species. When you take psilocybin, you're not just having a weird experience, you're participating in the universe's project of self-discovery. You're doing the work that needs to be done, the work of breaking down the barriers, dissolving the boundaries, transcending the limitations. And this is why they're illegal. This is why they're suppressed, because they threaten the control system, the death grip that the dominator culture has on human consciousness. They offer a glimpse of freedom, of possibility, of what we could become if we weren't trapped in the narrow hallucination of consumer capitalism, of endless growth, of separation from nature. Let me break the fourth wall for a moment and acknowledge what's happening here. I'm using words to try to convey an experience that transcends words. I'm using the rational mind to point towards something beyond rationality. I'm playing a game while simultaneously trying to show you that it's a game. This is the predicament we're always in. We're using the hallucination to wake up from the hallucination. We're like characters in a novel trying to contact the author. We're like code trying to understand the programmer. But maybe that's the whole point. Maybe the universe creates boundaries so that it can enjoy the process of transcending them. Maybe separation is necessary for the experience of reunion. Maybe we forget who we are so that we can remember, and the remembering is sweeter because of the forgetting. This is what the mystical traditions have always taught. You are not separate from God. You are God pretending to be separate so that you can experience the joy of coming home. The Atman is the Brahman. The dewdrop is the ocean. The wave is the water. But you have to realize this for yourself. Nobody can tell you. I can point, but you have to look. I can describe the territory, but you have to travel it. The map is not the territory, and these words are just a map, a finger pointing at the moon. Don't worship the finger. Don't mistake the menu for the meal. Don't think that because you've read about the psychedelic experience you've had it. You haven't. You have to go there yourself. You have to eat the mushroom, drink the ayahuasca, smoke the DMT. You have to pay the price of admission, face your fears, surrender control, and let the teacher teach. What I'm really advocating for is a kind of conscious hallucination. Instead of being passively victimized by the cultural hallucination, by the narrative imposed on you by parents, teachers, media, advertisers, politicians, what if you took responsibility for your own hallucination? What if you became the author of your own experience? This is terrifying, of course. It means giving up the security of the collective dream. It means standing alone, thinking your own thoughts, seeing your own visions. It means becoming, in Nietzsche's sense, an overman, someone who creates their own values instead of accepting inherited ones. But it's also exhilarating. It means freedom. It means creativity. It means waking up from the nightmare of history and stepping into the dream of possibility. It means recognizing that since it's all a hallucination anyway, you might as well hallucinate something beautiful, something true, something aligned with love and justice and the flourishing of all beings. This doesn't mean solipsism. This doesn't mean anything goes. There are constraints, there are consequences, there are other hallucinations you need to negotiate with. But within those constraints, there's enormous room for play, for creativity, for experimentation. The psychedelic experience shows you this. It shows you that reality is plastic, that the boundaries are more permeable than you thought, that consciousness is the primary datum and everything else is inference. It gives you a glimpse of your own power, your own agency, your own responsibility. And then it sends you back to consensus reality, back to your job, your relationships, your bills, your problems. But you come back changed. You know now that it's a game and you can play it differently. You can play it consciously. You can play it for higher stakes. So here we are at the end of this transmission, this attempt to use the hallucination of language to point toward the truth beyond language. What have we learned? That reality is not what we thought it was. That consciousness is primary, not secondary. That we're participants in a cosmic creative process, not spectators or victims. That the universe is alive, intelligent, and interested in us. That we have more power and more responsibility than we ever imagined. The persistent hallucination we call reality is cracking. The old stories are dying. A new story is being born, and you're part of it. You're not just reading these words, you're writing the next chapter with every choice you make, every thought you think, every action you take. The question is, will you do it consciously or unconsciously? Will you be a passive dreamer or an active creator? The eschaton is immanentizing. The membrane is thinning. The moment is now. Wake up.